David beat Goliath. I'm Jessica Denson, and this is Lights On. Welcome, everybody, to the Lights On YouTube channel and show. I'm Jessica Denson. If you're not already subscribed, please subscribe where you're watching this on the Jessica Denson channel. This is the home for action. We are highlighting the actions of those who stand out and do what is necessary to save our democracy. It is a lesson in Timothy Snyder's book on tyranny, and it is the motto of this show. And without that courage to stand out, to take that uncomfortable position that is needed, we will not survive. But if we have that courage to be the Davids among the Goliath, we will win. So we are going to continue to highlight that action. We have a massive movement building behind us for a historic demonstration on Washington next Friday. It's called Now DC. I'm spearheading this along with our incredible grassroots organization at 14th Now, and there is incredible momentum behind this. If you haven't already, please go to nowmarch.org. Press the join us button to let us know if you'll be there so we can get your RSVP. If you can't, but I really hope you can support us by donating, and we absolutely need that financial support as well. There's a lot of very intensive expenses associated with this. So if you can support us in spirit that way and financially, we absolutely need it and are so grateful for it. Please click the donate button at nowmarch.org. Again, nowmarch.org. The event is Now DC. We have speakers lining up. We have union leaders. We have veterans. We have constitutional scholars. We have authoritarian experts. I am so incredibly honored to be spearheading this movement. It is really such a joy in these dire times to have the honor to stand up for democracy with all of you. And I can't wait to see you exactly 1 week from now in Washington, D.C. So let us highlight Representative Al Green. You know what happened this weekend. He was the lone member of Congress to speak out in righteous indignation during Trump's gaslit joint address to Congress, this illegitimate president, someone who is illegal per Section 3 of the 14th Amendment and not even qualified by our Constitution to hold that office. And Al Green had the moral, righteous indignation and courage to speak out, to call him a felon, to call him out specifically on his attempts to defund Medicaid. And for that righteous behavior was escorted out of the halls of Congress, out of the chamber where felon Donald Trump was giving that speech. Imagine if every single Democrat in that caucus had joined him. What an opportunity they had. I thought they needed to walk out en masse. They didn't do that, but what if they had done that? What if they had stood behind this one man? By the way, the one man who has launched articles of impeachment against Donald J. Trump, what is absolutely necessary and because of his behavior from day one. Multiple impeachable offenses. What happened instead to Representative Al Green? Well, they censured him. The MAGA Republicans, in their predictable but nonetheless despicable act of gaslighting and projection, while they have members of their own caucus who led a deadly insurrection on that building, on that Capitol, led by the man who is sitting illegally in the highest office in our country and frankly world right now. It's unthinkable. They pardoned those people. They forgive those people. But Representative Al Green has the righteous indignation to speak out against them, and they censure him. And here's the really egregious part. 10 Democrats, 10 of Representative Al Green's very own colleagues joined that censure resolution. Look at the screen. Look at their names. I'm going to read them to you. Ami Bera, of California, Ed Case of Hawaii, Jim Costa of California, Laura Gillen of New York, James Himes of Connecticut, Chrissy Houlihan of Pennsylvania, Marcy Kaptur of Ohio, and Jared Moskowitz of Florida. Also, Marie Glusenkamp Perez of Washington, and Thomas Swazi of New York. Man, oh man, some of those names are so familiar. I remember when they were running for election and how we all got behind so many of them as defenders of democracy. How utterly shameful for them to fall into this false sense of, what is it? I don't even know what it is. I mean, what are we in kindergarten now when we condemn somebody for saying something rude, but we can't condemn a felon who incited a deadly insurrection? Or we condemn the person who speaks out against him for speaking a little bit out of tune. What the hell have we become? You wonder why the Democrats aren't raising any money right now. And here's a little bit of a hint: because of behavior like this. And it's not going to change, Democrats. It's not going to change. It's not going to change unless they start getting really courageous and really right with themselves and start joining Al Green instead of voting against him, censuring him. They need to be joining him. I'm going to play just a really brief clip, but an important one, from Representative Al Green after he was censured. By the way, after he was censured, he was joined by Representative Ilhan Omar and I think Rashida Tlaib and others in singing "We Will Overcome" in the floor of the House. And there was apparently a screaming match that broke out, even because of this singing, "We will overcome." This is where we have gotten people. But this is part of Representative Al Green's speech. Listen to what he said. I said it at the top of the show.
You are a Goliath. But Mr. President, there are Davids among us. Your incivility can no longer be tolerated. It has to be met with righteous indignation and righteous incivility. I yield back the balance of my time.
Yes, it must be met with righteous indignation and righteous incivility. And we have civil means. We have civil means to handle this. He used a lot of his speech to talk about his impeachment efforts. He should not be standing alone in these efforts. He should be joined right now by every member of that caucus. You want to start raising money, Democrats? You want to have any hope of winning another election in this country? You're fooling yourselves if you think that we're going to have any semblance of a normal election in 2 years and 4 years. If we get Donald Trump out of power right now, and JD Vance, and of course Elon Musk and all of their co-conspirators, we might have hope of having another normal election. But if we don't, what a delusion, fantasy land you are living in to think that you are going to win another election. I titled this show, "Show Me a Hero." A lot of you don't know this about me. Maybe some of you do, depending on how many of you have paid close attention for the many Lights On shows. But I actually come to all of this as an artist. I've been an actor since I was very young. One of the last jobs that I worked on before I took that sharp, misguided right turn into politics and worked on the Trump campaign was a TV show called "Show Me a Hero." And it was produced by David Simon. I played Oscar Isaac's sister-in-law. It aired on HBO, and it was a true story. And the name "Show Me a Hero" came from an F. Scott Fitzgerald quote that actually says, "Show me a hero, and I will write you a tragedy." And I always thought, when I thought of that quote, I thought, I take that quote and I put it in reverse. Write me a tragedy, and I will show you a hero. Write me a tragedy, and I will show you a hero. And that's what I hope we all take, the inverse of that quote, and live by it. We are living an unthinkable takeover of all of the freedom and progress and justice that this country and its brave citizens, veterans, people who have come to this country fighting for the American dream have fought for, and we risk losing it all. What a tragedy that would be. Let us show each other a hero. Let us be the hero in this moment. That is most certainly the spirit that I took just a few years after I was on that show on HBO when I launched my pro se legal battle against Donald Trump, a battle that was a moral necessity to me. It wasn't a political thing. It wasn't anything, but realizing I had to get really right with myself, and that if I cared about having value or contributing to this world at all, which I always have, I always genuinely have, that I wouldn't have credibility if I didn't stand up for the injustice that I had lived through then. And because of that right motive, years later, through many battles, but ultimately victoriously, I invalidated every single illegal NDA that Donald Trump used to try to silence his former staffers for life. It was the tip of the iceberg of his authoritarian aims, and I lived it firsthand 7 years ago. Okay, so I have been in the position of a David battling Goliath, and I can tell you that if you stick to it, if you don't doubt those weapons of peace and spiritual power, that you will be victorious. So Representative Al Green should not be standing alone, although it was only took one David to take down Goliath. But Representative Al Green should be joined by every single member of the Democratic caucus. And if they want to start raising money again, if they have any hope of not being tied to the absolute downfall and destruction of our democracy, now is time to get on board. I want to read from this Substack that one of our 14th Now DC co-organizers brought to my attention. It's called An Open Letter to Democrats. Decorum is not virtue, it's cowardice. This is the Minerva's Watch Substack, and I really liked what she said. She said, of those 10 Democrats I named to you, they are traitors and should be treated as such. This is not a matter of party politics. This is a matter of lawmakers falling in line with a fascist and anti-American regime, which is something I will not tolerate. I also include Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries in that group, as their complicity has allowed the environment we find ourselves in. There are times for decorum and times for action. Take a guess which of those times we are in. We learned this lesson already countless times. The politicians kicking the can down the road on the slavery issue until the tension built to its breaking point. The laissez-faire policies of the early 20th century that caused the Great Depression. The countless appeasements and charity given to Hitler on his rise to power. And American isolationism impeding us from acting to protect our allies. Authoritarianism and crisis do not correspond to decorum. In fact, they count on it to steal power out from under the complacent government. Don't make us relearn lessons we've already fought to correct. What benefit do you all believe is conferred to you by sticking to your holier-than-thou decorous moral grandstanding? I suppose you think that when the ash settles and your people are destitute because there were no more safety nets to catch them, or they were forcibly taken away and sent to camps for being different, you will be able to sleep at night, knowing that when America needed you most, you chose to stick to your precious decorum. When all that you worked for crumbles and blows away like dust in the wind, and your actions fill the streets with bodies, I hope you feel the viscera and bloody ichor staining your hands. And when you finally depart from this earth, history will view you as nothing but a coward, your legacy ruined by complicity. No mincing of words there, and it is deserved. It is deserved. I had on Lights On this week Timothy Ryback. Actually, he is the author, really an honor, the author of Takeover, Hitler's Final Rise to Power, which has really come into view recently, brought to a lot of people's attention by this piece in The Atlantic that he wrote recently, How Hitler Dismantled a Democracy in 53 Days. And by the way, Timothy joined us from Europe, and his internet connection was not super great because he has the moral decency to avoid using Starlink, which I really, really respect. And the connection wasn't great. So we're actually going to redo the interview next week with his new piece coming out in The Atlantic. And I'm really excited for that. But in this conversation I had with Timothy, it was so evident, and it's what he writes about, that this could not, Hitler's takeover could not have been accomplished without the complicity of both moderate conservatives, not the extreme right, and members of the opposition that came to his side, that initially were against him, but ultimately let him pass the Enabling Act, which ended democracy in Germany and let Hitler become a dictator. Members of the opposition and members of the moderate right allowed him to do this. He couldn't have done it just with the fringe, just like Donald Trump can't do it just with MAGA. It is the other so-called reasonable, decorum appreciating enablers that allow it to happen. So that's a little bit of a window into the kind of moment that we're dealing with right now. Representative Al Green should absolutely not be standing alone, but I am very grateful for his willingness to stand out, because that's what it takes to draw attention to the necessary action. Look at the praise, rightfully, that Al Green got this week, and take a cue from it, Democrats. You want that kind of praise? You want that kind of money coming to you? Put your money where your mouth, put your mouth where, put up or shut up. We need action. We need you to join forces. We need you to start speaking now about what you can do to get Donald Trump out of office now. Talking to you, Jasmine Crockett, talking to you, Bernie Sanders, talking to you, Chris Murphy, Elizabeth Warren, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Jamie Raskin, Adam Schiff, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries. We won't let you off the hook. All of you, every single one, put up or shut up. We need action. We need it now. Nothing short of extreme, righteous, radical, constitutional action is needed right now. Of course, Donald Trump is also disqualified from this office, as I mentioned incessantly. If you haven't already, please listen to the interview I did earlier this week with Evan Bernick. That issue is not dead. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is not dead. It can be raised by a simple conversation, a mere conversation by any single Democrat could establish in the public discourse Donald Trump's illegitimacy, his constitutional lack of authority to be holding the presidency. And we could use that to change the national conversation. Sure is what we're going to do on March 14th in Washington, D.C. 314 means so many things, but first and foremost, it symbolizes Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which says that insurrectionists are barred from holding office. The Supreme Court ruling never took away that disqualification. It remains right now in this moment and cannot be removed without a 2/3 vote of Congress, which is a near impossible threshold to reach. We must use the constitutional means that we have. If we don't use them, we absolutely are bound to lose them, and God knows they're disappearing in front of our face as we speak. So we have our work cut out for us. Like I said, 1 week from today, I can't wait to see you in Washington, D.C. There has been such incredible momentum. I really want to give a shout out to everybody who has been putting this on the map, from Cliff Cash, who is one of our co-organizers, allies, just promoting the heck out of this. It's going to be really a day for veterans too. If you hear Veterans March and 314, it's the same thing. We're all together. We're all going to be meeting at the National Mall on noon on March 14th. Cliff also has some other protest activity he has planned over the weekend to protest the media and the Heritage Foundation. So if you're able to, please make plans to stay in for the whole weekend. But please start off your protest with us on 314. This is going to be a date, like I said last week, that makes history and changes history. if we, the people, show up in numbers too big to ignore and claim the power that is ours. We have to show up. We have to claim our power. Now, I told you a few minutes ago how I'm an actress, and the real reason I wanted to bring that into the conversation today is because March 14th has also been designated as a National Strike Day. A National Strike Day from workers. Like I mentioned earlier, we have some union leaders that have reached out to us. I'm really excited about their involvement. I am a member of the Screen Actors Guild, and I was struck by a speech given by Jane Fonda about 2 weeks ago at the Screen Actors at the SAG Awards. She got the Lifetime Achievement Award. I'm going to dig up her picture. It disappeared on me, but I want to show you. Beautiful picture of activist Jane Fonda. And I'm going to read you what she said. She said, "We are in our documentary moment. This is it. And it's not a rehearsal. This is it. And we mustn't for a moment kid ourselves about what's happening. This is big time serious, folks. So let's be brave." And I highly recommend going and listening to the entirety of Jane's speech. She talked about those crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge with John Lewis, being willing to get beaten for justice, for equality. And we're not at that point yet. We're not at that point yet. We have the right to assemble peacefully, and we are going to claim that right. And by the way, all kinds of precautions are being taken. We have law enforcement with us. We have veterans with us. That's why part of the reason why it is so expensive to put on an event like this, because we have to make sure we have first aid and porta potties, all of those things that cost a lot of money, especially when you're at a National Park Service site like we are. So I mentioned it at the top. I'll mention it again. If you're able to support us financially, we really need it. The expenses are really high. I will tell you, when we did 14th Now 1.0 back in January, the money kind of exceeded the physical showing. And right now we're in the inverse position. We have an enormous amount of people that we're expecting on March 14th, but we haven't raised the money that we need yet. And we really, really do need your support there to make this happen, to make it safe for everyone. So please go to nowmarch.org. If you're able, even if, just everybody watching this donated $5, it would make a huge difference, and share it with others. Share the link with others would make a huge difference. So if you could go to nowmarch.org, I also put the link directly to the donation page in the description of this video. So if you're able to do that, it would mean the world. Thank you so very much for that. But Jane Fonda, this is our documentary moment. This is our documentary moment. I mean, I've been saying for years, like, we are the ones that history is going to be written about. Our actions and decisions, our tolerance, our courage, all of that is what is going to be written about in the history books. We have the opportunity right now to be those history makers and history changers, and we have to seize it. We have to seize it. So in the spirit of Jane and being a member of a union myself, I'm encouraging all union members, all workers really at all, to just take that minor sacrifice of taking off a day of work on March 14th. It's such a minor sacrifice. I hope that we get actors who are working on film sets and TV sets up in New York to take the day off and come down to New York City. Come down to Washington, D.C. Members of the Actors Equity Union who are on the stage in Broadway musicals and plays, take the day off, come down to Washington, D.C. Such a minor sacrifice for democracy. Such a minor sacrifice. Listen to Jane Fonda. Seize your documentary moment. Realize how incredibly, incredibly serious a time we are living through. As I mentioned earlier, the momentum behind this event is incredible. I also want to thank the independent, truly independent media outlets who have put us on the map this week. We have the Well, last week we had Mark Thompson, who's been a great ally and friend. Really appreciate him. Shout out also to the Jack Hopkins podcast. If you haven't watched it, go into my interviews on this channel and watch my interview with Jack. He's such a wonderful human being, citizen. I really love the conversation we had about our own power and everything being mental, and us really just needing to flip that switch and recognize the power that we have. Definitely check out the Jack Hopkins podcast. I was also on with a gentleman, former CIA intelligence officer named David Debato. He's got a podcast called No Delusion Zone. You can check that out as well. And finally, I want to give a very nice shout out to Tony Michaels, who hosts the Tony Michaels podcast. If you missed it, you should definitely check out a short I put out yesterday challenging the Midas Touch network to spread 314 with all of their millions of followers in the Midas Mighty. It was part of last week's show. I re-released it yesterday. Tony Michaels took notice of it. Tony Michaels and I both have history with the Midas Touch network. And he promoted the heck out of that video yesterday because him and I know some truth that you might not necessarily hear if you're just watching the shows put on by the brothers of Midas Touch, and particularly Ben Meiselas. But I highly suggest, he kept referring people to my video. I also would highly suggest you go listen to Tony Michaels live from yesterday, Thursday, March 6th. Go watch his live from yesterday on the Tony Michaels podcast channel, especially around the hour 30-minute mark, I think, is when he really gets into it. Truth truly is gold, and actually truth is priceless. And we're totally sealing our downfall if we're afraid to speak the truth right now, no matter where it's coming from, no matter what label the people who claim to be pro-democracy are giving themselves. We have to speak the truth, and without it, we have nothing. So shout out to Tony Michaels. I really appreciate the words that he spoke yesterday. And also check out that video that, if you didn't already, 7 minutes long, weird numbers on it, which kind of makes you think that YouTube is suppressing certain content. I don't like to acknowledge that too many times, but sometimes it's too obvious to ignore. So check out that video. It says Fearless and Independent, the Midas Touch Challenge. Okay, so just continuing, it's been such an incredible week planning and getting people behind the 14th Now movement. And so many things are on the line, absolutely unthinkable actions. I'm just going to highlight a few of them. I mean, you know what is going on. If you turn on the news for 2 seconds, it's unthinkable, the actions that are being taken right now. One thing that David Debato brought to my attention during that podcast earlier this week was this executive order that Donald Trump signed on one of his first days in office. And it was kind of underreported at the time, but in it, he asked, I'm going to read it to you. Within 90 days of the date of this proclamation, the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of Homeland Security shall submit a joint report to the President about the conditions of the southern border of the United States and any recommendations regarding additional actions that may be necessary to obtain complete operational control of the southern border, including whether to invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807. And Donald Trump, this illegitimate, constitutionally disqualified dictator, squatter in our White House, is very seriously considering the invocation of this Insurrection Act. That 90-day clock that started with that executive order, there's about 40 some days left on it. And he's asked Hegseth, Fox News host and alcoholic head of the Department of Defense, Hegseth, and puppy killer Kristi Noem to weigh in on the issue. Okay, This is where he's headed. He has withdrawn support for Ukraine as they are being absolutely pummeled by Russia. Unelected billionaire is in our government accounts, in our bank accounts. This is we highlighted the heroes at the top, or the hero, Representative Al Green. Here's the opposite side of the spectrum. U.S. District Judge Colleen Collar-Cotella. Today, this U.S. District Judge refused to block Elon Musk and his dodgy, non-governmental thieves from accessing our Treasury information. This is what she said. If plaintiffs could show that defendants imminently plan to make their private information public or to share that information with individuals outside the federal government with no obligation to maintain its confidentiality, the court would not hesitate to find a likelihood of irreparable harm. Unthinkable. That's the standard for getting a temporary restraining order, irreparable harm. And it's not sufficient that we have unelected, unvetted hackers, coders, not auditors. Again, this is a total sham hoax to think for a second that Elon Musk is in the federal government to cut out waste and abuse. He's in there to cut out oversight of his multi-billionaire ventures. So that's what we're dealing with. That's what we're dealing with in some areas. You know, if you want to go back to the story of Hitler, I will remind you, as I have on this show before, that there's no way that Hitler would have been successful in his takeover of Germany in the 30s without the assistance of lawyers and judges. Without lawyers and judges, he couldn't have done it. We, the people, my friends, have to claim our power right now. We, the people, must claim our power. That's what we're going to do together on March 14th, peacefully, but absolutely unmistakably make clear who's in control here. It is not Donald Trump. David knew that. David knew who was in control, and that's why he defeated Goliath. So let's all be Davids, come together on March 14th and claim our power. I want to share with you a couple more things, and we're going to give you a short show tonight. I have some new merch on the Jessica Denson site. I added, thanks to one of our lovely loyal viewers, a new travel mug. You see on the screen, it just has the Lights On logo, but on the other side, it says Stand Out. That mug and our regular ceramic mug have that Stand Out logo. And that is a new addition to the Lights On merch site. That's a great way to support me and my work. It's at thejessicadenson.com. You can also support my work and my legal battle, which is very much ongoing, at thejessicadenson.com/donate. So I know a lot of you, I've been wearing my hat and had my mug in some recent videos. I know a lot of you have been ordering there, and I want to thank you so much for that. As I've mentioned before, if you haven't already, the most important thing, to share this show, to share our calls to action, to share the empowering, necessary means by which we can stand out and be effective and stop this unthinkable authoritarian coup, is by just subscribing, which is absolutely free. Subscribing to the Jessica Denson YouTube channel, battling those insane algorithms that seem kind of fixed sometimes, and making sure that you share the show and the movement with as many people as you can. Again, it's nowmarch.org for 314. And please, if you haven't already, press the join us button to let us know if you're going to be there, so we can get a correct count on the numbers. And if you're able, support us financially, which we very much need and so very much appreciate. All right, everybody. I'm doing a short show tonight because I have a lot of work. We're in the no sleep zone at Lights On at nowmarch.org, at Now DC, with planning. It's literally nonstop. We did a warm-up act back in January, and we didn't sleep then, and this time we're not sleeping again. So I'm going to do a little bit of a short show, and I want to say one thing. I want to actually correct a few things just before I sign off. I think I've been a little bit modest before in my representations about 14th Now and what we have done. What we have done is truly, truly extraordinary. And I want to give everybody involved that due credit. Are we grassroots organizers? Yes. Did we ever do this before? No. But we have really stepped up to this moment. There are some people out there who, and by the way, these are the few voices. The masses are behind us and promoting this, anonymous, many, many other people with massive platforms. But there's some naysayers that say, who are these people? They've not done anything before, or they don't have an organization. They're not established. And it reminded me of the parable of the drowning man. You've heard this parable. It's where a man is drowning and God sends him a boat. And he's like, no, I'm waiting for God. I don't want a boat. I'm waiting for God. And then another boat comes, or a helicopter comes to save him. He's like, no, I'm waiting for God. And so he's just waiting for God all these times. And eventually the guy drowns. And when he gets to heaven and meets God, he said, God, why didn't you come and save me? And God's like, I sent you 2 boats and a helicopter and you didn't get on them. Well, here's your boat and your helicopter. It's our second one that we're sending you with nowmarch.org. Anybody who's saying that we are not an established organization, we are sure as hell established enough. We have made our mark. We are absolutely legitimate. By the way, do we have permits? Of course we have permits. We had permits the first time. We have permits this time. We are doing all of the really difficult and expensive work to make sure everybody's safe. There could not be anything more legitimate about what we're doing. And by the way, we're picking up the mantle where others have not. And I want to thank also the affiliation, especially of 5051 in DC. You can go to the 5051 DC Linktree, which is linktree/5051DC, and you'll see our event there. A lot of other groups are coming on board with us. So, to all the naysayers who say, who are you? This is who we are. We have constitutional scholars, the most respected in this country, that back our work and will be joining us on that day. Authoritarian experts, union leaders, legal activists who have beat Trump, like myself. I am not without credibility. I've been doing this and I have a track record and I know who I am and what I'm doing. So just to say, we may have been a little modest in our representation before. That said, we can't do it without you. We are so grateful, as always, for your support. We, the people, have the power. And I just leave you with that sentiment. And as I said to Jack, and I said to David this week, my gratitude for being honored, thought worthy of overcoming the challenges that we face. And that's true for each and every one of you. Think of it that way. Think of it as an honor that's been bestowed upon us, that we are thought capable of overcoming, and we shall overcome. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining me today on Lights On. Have a wonderful weekend. And as always, let your light shine.